if you want to be a professional photographer, I'm not talking hobbyist, I'm talking professional, do you need a full frame camera in 2026? When an iPhone is as good as it is, does sensor size really matter? I'm going to give you my take as a professional photographer, someone who's been in this industry for many moons. When I started, I didn't have a beard, I did have a full head of hair, and I certainly wasn't grey and wrinkly. But, you know, we need to do a bit of backstory on photography first before we get to the answer, because you need to understand where these things sit, because also depending on where you are in your career probably depends on how much this matters. Now, when I started, to say that I was skint would be an understatement. I had £200 to get into photography. The 1DS Mark II had just come out. First digital camera available to the masses that was better than 35mm film. But 35mm film isn't really what pros shot on. The minimum requirement was 645. Most of them shot 6.7, 5.4, 5.8. So 35mm, what we call full frame today, that's what your mum and dad use on family holidays. That was the amateur sensor size. So because I was skint, when I started, I was like, sensor size matters. The bigger the sensor, the better the image. I got a Zenza Veronica 645 for 200 quid from some arcade in Cardiff. I got 5 rolls of free film with it as well. I used to go to a dark room in Cardiff. It had a cinema there, a dark room. Chapters, that's when I went to Chapters and I developed it. This was during my extremely excessive partying phase. So apologies to everyone who was there, who met me. But that was the era. I had my Pentax ME100, something or other like that, and this here. And that's what I did my work with. I was doing documentary work, portrait work. I shot it on these. They were great. Brilliant. This was much better than the 35mm film one, but I'm sure digital was great, but then I just couldn't afford it. It was like £8,000 or something nuts like that for a 1DS. Now, of course, as I got busier and people needed stuff from me, I shot a few editorials and that setup. This is like late noughties, I suppose, mid noughties, somewhere around there. I've reached that age where dates just get muddled up. So if I say something you're like, that didn't exist then, I've got it wrong. But then I was like, yeah, I need a digital camera. So I got a 450D and it's this crop sensor digital camera, and it was nowhere near as good as these film cameras. Then I got a 50D, which was really convenient, really useful. So I worked with a guy called Hits, and he had the 5D Mark IIs, and it had similar layouts, and I could use his lenses and just take my little camera body, but it sucked. And the film cameras are still better. Then I bought the 5D Mark I. I got it secondhand. I got it in the closing down sale for Jacobs or Jessop's, whichever one went bankrupt at the time. £800. I bought that, and considering the 50D was many generations newer than the 5D Mark I, that 5D Mark I was beautiful. Now, the skin tones were great, the depth was great, the 3D look from that bigger sensor, because going from a APS-C to a full frame is a big jump in sensor size. It really is. And I was like, this is great. This is what I need. And I was shooting away, and then I was shooting magazines. I was, not big jobs back then. And then I got my first ad campaign. I was like, I need a better camera. So I bought the 5D Mark II. Now this is a better camera, but the same sensor size, still full frame. And I shot on this. I've billed out 7 figures on this camera. This is the camera that has been used for the majority of my entire career, taking into account the portrait, the documentaries and everything else, not just what I do now, but the majority of my career. Weddings. I mean, you can tell this has been used at weddings. Look at it. Look at the state of it. This is held together with gaffer tape and a dream. And it rattles still. But this is a proper workhorse of a camera. Great low light capabilities. You could shoot at 3200 ISO, and some of you sitting there going, whoop-de-doo, the grain and noise was excessive, but you could do it. This was the first camera I thought, yeah, this really beats film. This is a better look than film. And it was full frame, and it was great. And I was shooting away in it. I shot some billboards, shot some campaigns, just national stuff to start with. Then we started doing global stuff, this sort of like worldwide campaigns. And I was like, yeah, this is great. This is brilliant. Then my mate Hits had a phase 1 back on a Hasselblad, and I borrowed it to shoot a magazine cover because it was kind of a big deal. And the difference in image quality was substantial. Megapixels wise, they both had the same resolution. It just had a bigger sensor. And that got me back to thinking, yeah, bigger sensor could be good. But in the meantime, I worked that camera to the bone. We shot for Mars, Dolmio, Papa John's, the fire service, Virgin Media, Delhi France, I can't think of any of the names. Shot for loads of people with this camera. You know, over the years, I've shot with them again since with better cameras, but over the years I shot with loads of people with this camera and it was great. And then we started getting bigger jobs, and then I got my agent and we bought a 5DSR. Again, still full frame, but a better camera. So we've had 3 full frame cameras plus the film one, and they were all better. The sensor didn't get bigger, the technology got better, and the image quality got better. And this is also relevant. We started shooting with the phase backs, P45 plus, P65 plus, and then we started getting the IQ backs in, which were really nice to see my sensors, and especially for still life stuff, you could get that great live view to get the focus right, get the stylist seeing what's going on in there. Really useful kit, stupidly expensive, considerably better than any full frame camera, but considerably more expensive. And then in recent years, I've got this. It's going to come in. Is it on wheels? It's on wheels. We're good. I got this big boy. So this is a, how do we get it around? There we go. A GFX. This is cheap. This is crop sensor medium format. Who knows what it's called, but it's bigger than full frame. It's smaller than the 645. But these here, this camera is brilliant. It's a bigger sensor and it's newer technology. And this is where it becomes really difficult. And this is why it's really confusing because, and I know this is a very roundabout way to get there. Yes, all things being equal, and in a lot of things in photography, they never are, the bigger the sensor, the better the image quality. But it's not just that. All things being equal. However, if you're buying a 5D Mark I or comparing it to the latest and greatest crop sensor, the latest and greatest crop sensor is going to win out in image quality. The reason why, if you're a pro, I think you should buy as a minimum a full frame camera and not even consider anything smaller is down to 2 kind of factors. One, rental houses. Lots of rental houses don't have crop sensor lenses. And this is important. I know there are some that do, but the way it works in our industry, if you're going to go and use a studio or a production company, they often have ties to a rental house. That's why, although I am a big Broncolor fanatic, you'll see me shooting pro photo sometimes because we go into a studio and they go, we've got pro photo at this studio because the rental house that they're tied up with is a pro photo rental house. I can't do anything about that. You can't take your own kit. You've got to use it. And then if you go, right, you can bring cameras but not lights, we've got our cameras. Oh, you can only get these lenses, for example. So in the UK and in the States, I know, and this is kind of a New York, San Fran sort of thing, the best, cheapest full frame camera to buy that is still accepted by Digitech, still accepted by software, still accepted by rental houses is the 5DS or 5DSR. That is the best camera you can get at the cheapest price that works in that environment. Some of them still rent the 5D Mark IVs out, but they weren't as popular. The 5DS system, high resolution, the lenses are still available because cine cameras still use these EF lenses. I'm shooting on EF lenses over here on this camera, and that is a very important factor in deciding. However, if you're starting to look at, oh, maybe I should get the latest and greatest mirrorless full frame camera, you start to go, yeah, that's great, mate. You can buy a second-hand one of these for less money than the latest and greatest Canon. And this is 100 megapixels medium format. So unless you're shooting something sporty, and someone's going, well, yeah, but I shoot this. Yeah, unless you're doing that, it's very difficult to say that this is not the camera to go for. And yes, there's a Hasselblad option, but you can't use a Hasselblad option. And again, this is the same as the Godox thing. It comes down to logistics. The Hasselblad one goes into its own tethering software. Most Digitechs don't know how to use it. Every Digitech knows how to use this camera here into Capture One. And yes, every Digitech hates it because it's really temperamental. And you have to do this weird plugging, unplugging thing, flipping the cable up and down. I don't understand how that works. It should be standard, but you have to do all that, but it still works. So do you need full frame to be a pro? No, but I wouldn't advise going smaller than full frame because one, the aesthetic is better. And even if you had the better image quality on a smaller sensor, unless you're shooting still life like I do, it's probably not going to be in your best interest. The bigger the sensor, the better the image. 5DSR is the cheapest big sensor you can get, which is still usable in the commercial world. This here is the cheapest medium format camera you can get that is usable and is cheaper than modern full frames. There's not much benefit to mirrorless. This is a mirrorless camera. I don't like it. It's not for me, but that's because I'm old and I've been doing it for so long with the viewfinder. Looking at a digital screen, which looks worse than real life, is a bit like, meh, it's not really for me. But you know, if you love that thing, yeah. The R5 is also one of the most supported cameras from Canon, R5, R5 Mark II, in the industry. Anyone who's shooting stills and moving, and it's not moving image like TV moving, like a TVC, it's just like your 6-second moving. That R5 is a great purchase. I believe my Digitech Paul has one, so we'll probably do a bit of testing on that. But it's you don't have as many options in camera choice as you think you do as a pro. You can't just get anything. It's got to work with Capture One. It's got to be supported by rental houses. There's all these little things. I say it's got to. It doesn't have to. I could go, oh, do you know what? Hasselblad's for me. And one day I've always wanted a Hasselblad. I dream of having a Hasselblad. And do you know what? I'll get my own Digitech. I'll train them up on the software and they'll just have to be hired for every single job. So I'll have to pay them a retainer so they don't go off on other jobs with other people. And that's how you'd have to do it. So, you know, there are ways around it, but that's expensive. And that's just so I can use a Hasselblad. Is it worth it? Who knows? I have got aspirations of having a 500 cm with a digital back. That is on the cards. We'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, that's where we are with sensor size. Yes, it matters, but you can get around it with little to no money at all, relatively in the grand scheme of the photography world.